So things like that, really just, taking a look at the law and making it meet the needs of today, because we're in a rapidly evolving world. Everything, even the town is evolving so quickly. We're looking at other laws. We're currently amending our law with our affordable housing law. We're looking at our battery moratorium, battery storage. This is a big thing. The state of New York wants to make everybody have electric cars and electric vehicles, but at the same time, they're shutting down Indian Point power plant, and they're not helping support. I mean, this building literally shuts down probably 10 to 20 times a day because I don't think there's enough electricity to support the needs of the town of Warwick. So we've got things like battery storage facilities, which there was a fire. I'm sure you're familiar with that. These battery storage facilities are popping up all over the state. In Putnam County, they're fighting against one right now, I think in the town of Carmel. We've got an applicant that wants to build a large battery storage facility in the town of Warwick. We extended a previously in place moratorium early this year that extends it out another year so that we can carefully look at and reevaluate the town's law as it relates to battery storage facilities. So we're constantly looking at how do we adapt? How do we change our laws to make more sense for the town? And how do they just make more sense to protect our community?
So what do you envision for this energy issue?
I think it's a lose-lose the way it's proposed, because, another problem with government is like both sides, they dig their heels and they double down, right? There's no compromise. Or I should say there's not enough compromise. There's not enough compromise to say, listen, you know what, maybe we have really good goals, but it's just not going to work that way. It doesn't make as much sense because there are huge consequences. They want to replace appliances. They're going to force residents, low-income residents, doesn't matter if you're low-income, high-income, you're going to have to replace your gas appliance with an electric appliance. That can't happen until the entire grid is up and running. And then now your energy costs are going to go up. If you're on you have a propane tank at your house and you've just purchased your entire propane tank that should last you a year and you've got to change all to electric appliances, it's not just buying a new oven or a new dryer. You have to change all the fittings in your entire house and pay for a contractor to come in there and do that. It's a burdensome thing for families to do. And I just don't think enough thought was really put into this with the electric school buses to mandate, not only make them do that and upgrade that, but the costs. I mean, if you look at a town tax bill, the vast majority of the cost of our taxes are school bills, your school tax bills. Now you're going to make a school district pay for all new buses that are electric buses that probably cost 2, 3, 4 times as much as an old diesel bus. All for the sake of what? Of saving the environment. Meanwhile, China produces far more emissions than the United States will ever produce, but we have to take on the burden of trying to save the world at the expense of people that can't afford to buy groceries right now. It seems like an unrealistic goal. I mean, maybe we reevaluate this when inflation is not where it is and groceries cost 4 times as much. But it's become an issue. It's become an issue that's just championed by the left. And no matter what, there's never going to be any pullback. There's never going to be any compromise. There's never going to be maybe we shouldn't have closed Indian Point right before we try to force the entire state to go completely electric dependent by 2030. I think things like that just don't make sense. It's a challenge, because I think a lot of it could be special interest. Do we know how much is well-intentioned versus how much is a special interest group that's driving these politics? Is it a battery manufacturer? Is it Orange and Rockland that's behind them? I don't know. I don't know what it is, but it's hard to trust. It's hard to trust, especially when it just doesn't make sense. When you're going to lock in school buses or municipalities to be completely electric run by a certain time period with no real plan for how to do that, no supported energy grid, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't add up. And the other thing, I'll give you another insight about this. Orange and Rockland is building a large scale. I don't know how much detail I can give about this, but they're going to invest nearly $1 billion on a substation in Warwick because of the failed grid that's here, the grid that cannot sustain itself. That $1 billion, that's not paid by Orange and Rockland. That's paid by the people who use Orange and Rockland. That means our bills, every single bill for the members of Orange and Rockland that turn a light switch on in Orange County and Sullivan County, our bill is going to go up to pay for this substation because Orange and Rockland is forced to meet the demand that New York State is imposing on them. That to me is not fair. It's not right, and it doesn't make sense. Not now, while and I'll go right back to grocery bill. I don't go shopping, my wife does, but I swear she tells me every time she goes, she takes a picture of how many groceries we got, and no matter what, it still costs $400. It used to be 20 bags for $400, then it was 18 bags for $400, now it's 12 bags for $400. And all while we're trying to put food on our table, our energy bill is going to skyrocket to try to meet the needs of New York State's energy crisis.
So are you then against the? I mean, there's this big draft of the clean energy. You know, that draft plan from the DEC. Do you know what I'm talking about? It's like 200 and some pages. Have you looked at that?
Yeah.
Did you read the whole thing?
Of course not. There's no way.
Well, I did a story that an architect who, because he was in charge of sustainability for the New York City school districts, and he read the whole thing. So, I mean, the thing is that those plans are not just for reducing the carbon emissions, they also affect health. I mean, I did a big story on wood burning. Wood burning has tremendous, horrible effects on people's health, and that it's a multidimensional endeavor to improve the environment for the planet and for people's well-being. I mean, saving billions on healthcare if you address those carbon emissions and other emissions.
I'm 100% supportive of helping the environment, save the environment, doing our part to save the environment, but not at the expense of the backbones of families and literally making it unaffordable to live in this entire area. So that's what's happening. So
do you see some alternative paths to meeting?
I think nuclear energy. I think nuclear energy has been proven. Now, Fukushima is one instance of it going wrong, but I think you can look at many reasons why that failed, and I think you can be more creative and fix it. But certainly, I don't consider myself to be an energy expert. I more consider myself to be more of a financial expert, and I'm seeing the financial implications to families and local residents. But just my opinion is that something like Indian Point, literally closing down Indian Point, and then immediately thereafter increasing all the goals and expectations to utilize electricity and get rid of natural gas, just didn't make sense. It didn't make sense. And I think it had a huge impact financially on a lot of people around here. And it's going to get worse way before it gets better. So I'm all for the goals that are set. I think they're lofty goals. I just think they're unreasonable expectations, and they don't understand the financial impact to regular people that will have.
Well, I think a lot of environmentalists were against closing Indian Point, weren't they?
I don't know what went into that. I think it was just maybe there was a lot of political power that went into that forced them to close.
The CPV power plant.
Yeah, that was another issue.
That was a disaster.
Yeah. That was a disaster. But yeah. I really think that Indian Point was a huge mistake, closing Indian Point, and then telling all of us that relied on the energy from there that you've got to figure out another way to the natural gas. You can't use natural gas. You can't use propane. You can't use the nuclear energy that's providing the grid. Where are you going to get your electricity from? I don't know. Can't use coal. Can't use CPV. Where's it going to come from? Solar. So the other option, now we've got beautiful Warwick. bucolic mountains and farmland, and people move here and invest here for the beautiful open space and farmland. Now you get solar fields all over. That's not beautiful for the environment. What happens when a solar array, when the company that puts it there goes out of business? Now you're left with a bunch of solar panels that are not producing energy for the grid, and they cost too much money to get rid of. You have nowhere to bring them, to put them, no way to repair them. So it's a highly complex, and I don't claim to be an expert on it. It's highly complex. We have to do something. Is windmills the answer? I don't know. Offshore windmills, that's tough. I don't think putting those expectations and those requirements, those unfunded mandates on the backs of local municipalities, including school districts, to meet those electric bus requirements, I don't think that's fair or reasonable. And I think by their digging in and doubling down is going to seriously hurt regular people. And I think if they opened up and had a better dialogue across the aisle, I think if Democrats and Republicans at the state level were able to better communicate, they could probably come up with a better solution and something that makes more sense for both the people as well as the state's goals. But I don't think that's happening. I know that's not happening. I know that they're not collaborating and they're not making these decisions together. They're not. I know it personally. I'm very close friends with many members of the Assembly and the Senate, and I know that it's not happening. And that's not helping the people of the state of New York. It's not what it was designed to do. And we're not represented well when both sides cannot come together and communicate. So
what about the incentive? There's the program, people get refunds for investing in, what's the name of that New York State program?
You have HEAP, which is not, I don't think that's that.
No, it's,
I'm not sure.
Okay. It's been around for a very long time where people get refunds for investing in alternative energy.
Mm-hmm.
I forget what it's
called. Well, that's assuming you have the disposable income to make those initial upfront investments. Many families might not. Most families probably don't even know about the programs. I can't name the program, and I'm very, very involved, and it's probably not readily accessible to everybody.
Okay, all right. So do you have any visions for? So where are? I know those solar arrays are a big issue in Warwick, that people are concerned about that. So do you have any visions about how to deal with that? Any thoughts about how to deal with it?
It's tough. So thankfully, the Town of Warwick Code does have good provisions on solar arrays. We have a ridgeline overlay district, which is a carefully constructed map of the town that has identified all the ridgeline, all the visible spots from any ridgelines that may be viewed from certain points in the town, to basically protect the view shed of our town. And we have a great planning board that does a really good job picking apart the code and applications and making sure that whatever applications come before the board meet the needs of the town and kind of comply with the long-term range comprehensive plan for the town. Solar's tough because, again, having a pragmatic viewpoint is you have to understand that these things are needed. And in many cases, people are relying on solar because they can't rely on the energy grid coming in from the government or Orange and Rockland. So they're getting creative. Not only are they trying to supplement their own energy consumption, but they're trying to make a few bucks while offsetting what's going back into the grid. So I understand that and I appreciate it, and I think it's good. We just have to be very careful where solar is sited. Warwick is very unique. We are the only town in Orange County with the PDR program, which is the purchasing of development rights, which has created over 5,000 acres of open space and protected farmland. That is what makes Warwick so unique, and that is a huge draw for people to not only come here, but for people to stay here. And putting solar panels on portions of this open space takes away a lot of what we have and what we cherish about our town. But in the same token, you need it. You need alternative sources of energy. The energy grid, like I said, this building shuts down 10 times a day because we just get brownouts or blackouts or whatever you want to call it. And I'll give you an example. There's solar panels on the senior center right next door. They don't work. They haven't worked in 5 years because they're too expensive to fix. And the company that put them in there did not warranty the work, and we have not fixed them. So now we have solar panels on top of the roof. It looks like we're doing our part to save the environment. They're just basically reflecting sunlight and doing nothing else. So it's tough. Solar is tough. I think, and it's another issue where I think Republicans and Democrats are skewed and not right, because I think Republicans, they have this natural desire to say, screw alternative energy. We don't want to do anything with that. It's not good. It's a scam. I don't think it's a scam. I think it's good. And I think a lot of Republicans have kind of embraced the anti-climate initiatives, right? The not even just about climate. I look at it more about financially benefiting towns, financially benefiting homes. If you can provide your own energy, if you can put a windmill, you can put a solar panel, you can provide your own, that's less you have to rely on the government. It's less you have to pay another company to get something for you. So I look at it as a financial benefit, not just to save the world. And I think that's great, saving the world, great goals. I don't think we're going to do that in the town of Warwick, or even America. If we completely went carbon neutral and didn't have any emissions, I still think everything would happen just as it is from every other country that's not following the rules. But I don't know. Solar is a tough issue that I don't think it can be solved very easily. I think a balance, right? We need a balance of energy alternatives. We need a balance with natural gas. We need a balance with coal. We need a balance of wood fire. We need a balance of nuclear energy. We need to balance everything. Everything's got to be balanced. And I think we've gone too far in one direction. The oil industry has been a complete lobby. And I think that we went into Iraq and Kuwait and all these other places just purely for the oil. And Dick Cheney's special interests or whatever he got out of that whole thing. But I think that we just need to get special interests out of our goals, whether they're left special interests or right special interests. They both have them. Then we can get better results for the people of this country.
So what's your vision in terms of a good balance where Warwick should go in terms of alternative energy and sustainability?
So I think Warwick is an interesting place. We've got a great mix of both sides, right? Republicans and Democrats, and then a huge swath of independents in the middle. And Warwick really has the same, I think, cross spectrum as the country, right? Republicans, Democrats, and independents. But we're very much a nature town between Greenwood Lake, Pine Island, Florida, the Black Dirt, the mountains, the Appalachian Trail running through. We've got a really good, unique perspective of looking locally and saving our own environment and doing what we can here to have a major impact. We have a lot of really good programs. We're talking about climate initiatives. I just got a grant for getting all electric landscaping equipment. We got a lawnmower, battery operated lawnmower, weed whacker, hedge trimmer, all this $10,000 worth of electric. But I didn't do that to save the world. I'm being completely honest with you. I did it because we needed landscaping equipment. And I think the battery operated stuff is going to be just as good as the gas powered stuff. And it's going to save us some money. Am I concerned about my power outages in town hall and the fact that I have to plug all this stuff in? That's going to draw more power. I certainly am. But I think at the end of the day, I'm going to save a little bit of money on gas every year. I think we're going to have good equipment, and I got it for free. And I say free with air quotes because nothing is free. But that's kind of my perspective. It's not so much saving the world. That could be a good side effect of my desire to save some money and do a little bit better and cut costs here and there. And that can be, but certainly my goal is not to save the world in any way. But I think back to Warwick, we were very nature centered. So we've got great parks, great lakes, great streams. And I think people are very ecocentric and understanding that we need to look out for our community and our town and do what's right. So through that, we've got many different great organizations. One, Sustainable Warwick, has done a really good job. They run an initiative to recycle Freon, right? Refrigerators, air conditioning units. I look at this as an amazing program. Now they'll tell you how much carbon emissions they're reducing, and I'm looking at it as this is incredible because we just let a whole bunch of residents get rid of their refrigerators and air conditioners that would have otherwise costed them money to get rid of. Now they got rid of it for free, so it saves our residents a few dollars in the long run, and I think that's great. And then there is a side effect of that of reducing the emissions into the atmosphere, and it's noble. But the main goal is to save our residents money and make sure that we can dispose safely of these things that could otherwise be toxic. But Warwick is an interesting town, and it's very much politically divided, but somehow we all come together and work together. Not everybody. You're going to get your extreme left will never talk to your extreme right. I like talking to everybody though. I like bringing everyone to the table, even if I completely disagree with your viewpoint, because I'm open to suggestions, I'm open to ideas, and there's always going to be someone smarter than me that brings a new idea that I might not have thought of.
Okay, so on this planet concern, so do you think? I just want to take that to its logical, where it's going. So, do you think it's useless then for people in the United States to aim for carbon neutrality and reducing pollution and all of that?
Not at all.
Okay.
No, I think they're great goals. I think they're necessary goals. I think especially pollution. Pollution is a completely separate thing in my mind than carbon emissions. The Hudson River is a prime example of an extremely polluted water body that was almost considered toxic 30, 40 years ago. And now my son and I just went on a sailboat trip over the weekend, and it's a beautiful place to go. The ecology there is wonderful. Fish life is incredible. It's vastly better than it was. So pollution and carbon emissions, I think, are two totally different things. I think the goals are good. And I think you have to have those types of goals. And I think you need far left goals. And I think you need far right goals. My point is they need to meet in the middle. And it's not one way or another. The far left goals of what I would consider New York State goals of being completely electric driven by 2030 are not in line with the far right goals of don't tell me how to live my life and stop putting unfunded mandates into my checkbook that I cannot afford. They need to meet in the middle. And that's what it is. You have far left goals of being completely carbon neutral and having electric school buses. They're not meeting the right side's goals. And I think they need to come to the middle, have a conversation, and see how we can work toward those goals in a reasonable manner that is not going to force these people to move to Pennsylvania or move to Florida where those laws and those expenses don't exist.
So, Nina, I know New York State isn't your terrain, the whole state, but in Warwick, I mean, there definitely is a lot of polarization in Warwick. So do you have any thoughts about how more cooperation, collaboration, acceptance, across the Great Divide could happen? What might your role as town supervisor be in bridging that divide?
I think the polarization and the divide comes from the top. I think it's coming from the state, it's coming from the federal government, and the infighting that's constantly happening, and the us versus them mentality, right? It's like each political party, it's us versus them. And that's coming from the state. that's coming from the governor, it's coming from the federal government, whether it's Trump, whether it's Biden, it doesn't matter who's in there. It's them versus us. And I don't think Warwick really has that too much, but if it does exist in any way, it's not because we don't love our neighbors and we don't want to get along. It's because groups of people are trained to believe that a political ideology is all that matters and that we can't work together and we can't come together. My thing is, and I think I've lived this as a mayor and currently as a town supervisor, is talking and working with everybody. I'm a Republican, but as mayor, I appointed Democrats to the village board. I appointed Democrats to committees and put them in positions of influence and power because I felt we needed a really good balance to accomplish the goals of our community. And I think the same thing is true for Warwick. I think everybody here understands that we all have a common goal, but there certainly is a bit of a divide. And I think that comes purely from national politics and the Fox News and the CNNs training their political parties to hate the other political party. That's what I think is happening. I think CNN trains Democrats to hate the Republican Party. Fox News is training the Republicans to hate the Democratic Party. And that is trickling down to local communities.
Okay. So, all right. So what are some of your visions for Warwick beyond more generally?
Specific vision, unfortunately, nobody wants to hear it, but a lot of it is infrastructure. Warwick's got 7 water districts and 2 sewer districts, and they are old and outdated and require a lot of upgrades. So unfortunately, my vision, which doesn't sound great, is finding grant funding to pay for those sewer districts and those water districts so that the residents, so for example, we've got one water district that has 27 people, 27 households on it. If you have $1 million project that needs to be done for that water delivery system, you have to split that cost between those 27 users. So trying to find grant money is a major concern of mine. In my first month in office, we applied for $16 million in federal grants to support our sewer district. In my first 6 months in office, we've gotten over $5 million in grants covering parks, covering bridge. We got one bridge, Jane Street Bridge in the Village of Florida. It's been closed for several years now. The very first thing that I did when I sat at this desk was apply for a $4 million grant to pay for that bridge. And we recently, within the last 2 weeks, were just awarded that grant funding for that. So a lot of my vision is really just taking care of the infrastructure for the town, making sure that our roads, our bridges, our parks are all in working order, and making sure that we can create that good balance that people want. And that balance is protecting our town, preserving our town, making sure that what people come here for, the farmland, the vibrant downtown communities, the beautiful lake, the hiking trails, make sure that is all protected while also not completely footing the entire tax burden on the public. And that's very much what I was talking about before with the state, is we have to protect our state. We have to protect our country. We have to protect our planet. But you also have to understand that the public is the one who has to pay for those things. And you have to strike the delicate balance of accomplishing your very lofty and needy goals while not doing it at their expense and to the point of it becoming a detriment. So the same thing here. Warwick is incredibly unique. It's so beautiful. We've got farmland, black dirt, lakes, hiking trail, fishing, camps, parks, you name it. Vibrant downtowns, amazing businesses, some of the best restaurants in Orange County. But it costs a lot to live here. The school taxes are incredibly high. We have great school districts. It costs a lot to live in Warwick. And then the real estate market over the last few years, the interest rates have completely skyrocketed, making it almost unaffordable for regular people to move here. So I think it's our responsibility as a town to make sure that we're doing our best to keep Warwick affordable for the people who live here, for the people who grew up here, for the families, the kids, my kids. I would love for my kids to grow up in Warwick and then stay in Warwick and move back here after college. It's our job to make sure that it remains an affordable town to live in. But we also have to make sure that it remains the town that people chose to live in, and that's the beautiful, bucolic, scenic Warwick that we all know.